Today we'll be going over a little story called Ashen Victor, a side story taking place in the world of Yukito Kishiro's Battle Angel Alita. This one is actually surprisingly hard to get a hold of. It's the only manga for the franchise that doesn't have a current digital release in English or a standalone physical release. The only current release that I'm aware of is its inclusion in Volume 5 of the deluxe edition of Battle Angel Alita published by Kodansha. That's where all the images you'll see in this video come from. I scanned them into my home printer myself. It took a while. I'm really glad this isn't very long. The creation of this manga requires a little backstory. When I talked about the end of the original series, I mentioned that the author chose to end the series prematurely due to an unspecified workplace interpersonal event that triggered what seems to have been a nervous breakdown. In 1995, he wrote an ending to Alita's story and took time to reflect, even questioning whether he should continue as a manga artist at all. The world had other plans. After he largely recovered from the worst of his episode, the man at Shueisha that had helped him get his first opportunities as a manga artist reached out to him. He was trying to improve the sales of the magazine Ultra Jump and asked Yukito Kishiro to contribute a story. That story would become Ashen Victor, which would be serialized in 4 chapters from late 1995 to 1996. That story would make its way to the US through Viz Media, published as a 4-part comic in 1998, and then as a graphic novel in 1999. In interviews, the author cites Frank Miller's Sin City as a major influence on the art style for Ashen Victor. It's a bit different from how he drew Battle Angel Alita, mostly in the use of stark black and white with few intermediate shades of gray, and sometimes omitting outlines altogether. It's a harsh style that, in my opinion, lends itself to some of the most striking pieces I've ever seen in his work. Yukito Kishiro has said the process of creating this story convinced him that his recovery would be in working on manga, even if he wouldn't return to Alita for several more years. You could say we have this story to thank for the franchise continuing past the original series. Before we jump in, I should mention that while this story does take place within the same world as Battle Angel Alita, it is completely disconnected plot-wise and features none of the same characters. The only connection is that it takes place in the dystopian city of the Scrapyard and involves the death sport Motorball. It takes place about 6 years before the start of the original series according to the timeline. With all that said, let's take a look at Ashen Victor. The night is lit by the harsh glare of stadium lights. Rubber squeals on the track, and the motorball soars through the air. The racers speed by. Clash! Racer number 5 is down, shattered to pieces on the track, and screaming as he's reduced to his core life support unit. The crowd roars, the other racers speed by, and number 5 stares on with a haunted expression. A phantom figure appears in his eye. Later on, 2 men are talking about him, remarking that despite crashing in every single race, he hasn't shown any sign of cerebral hemorrhage or other brain injury. It's unbelievable. The larger man, he's the manager of the racers' team named Ben, wonders if he has a guardian demon. The smaller man insists that he's a genius. He asks the manager to remember back when the racer had his tryout. He left quite an impression. He made the manager feel like he was a kid again, like it was a dream. But he doesn't have that drive. He doesn't want it enough. The other man admits he's right. A pro has to have nerves of steel when hundreds of millions of chips are circulating at the bookies, and your points get affected by monitor ratings. The circuit becomes a game of life and death. Still, the smaller man insists he's a genius and they should take a long view. 10 or 20 falls isn't something to whine about. But the manager gripes that he wouldn't look so incompetent if the racer could just finish one race. He agrees to talk to the team owner, but cautions that he's not a miracle worker. The smaller man grasps his shirt. He just wants to see a true motorballer, one who doesn't need to throw his strength or weight around. The manager tells him he's too old. Motorball ain't a sport anymore, it's a show of violence. That's what the audience wants. A door opens, and the racer appears in his civilian body. His name is Snev. The manager breaks the news to him that his contract with Team Spandau has been annulled. Snev says nothing. He only offers the manager his visor, which he left in the pit. Slightly chagrined, the manager tells Snev that he'll get his severance pay at the office. The smaller man, whom Snev addresses as Mr. Holmgold, tells Snev to come to his place if he has any problems. He'll do what he can for him. Snev just quietly says he appreciates the help as he leaves. Just out the door, though, he almost walks right into a hulking motorballer in his racing body, the very same that just saw him crash on the track. He tells Snev to move it, but trips him as he goes past. He mocks him, telling him to get off his knees if he has any pride. He would have been better off dying on the track. Snev says nothing. He just stands and walks away. The manager approaches the racer, addressing him as Dragunov. He says the new supplement seems to be working out for him. Dragunov smiles. The next race is his. Holmgold asks about the supplement. It's a new product from Megal Incorporated called Excel. So new it's not even on the market. Dragunov says it feels like someone jammed nitro right into his brain. Your vision expands and it feels like your body is 10 times bigger than it is. You have to get the hang of it to use it in a race, though. The manager slaps him on the shoulder, but Holmgold is disgusted by stooping to drugs. Smaller aside to point out a reference, Megal Incorporated seems to be a reference to Megal the Chemist from the original series, a minor antagonist that Alita hunted as a bounty because his drugs were killing people. Then he dosed himself with a pill that turned him into a werewolf before Alita killed him. It was a weird early chapter. It seems that 6 years earlier he was running a pharmaceutical company. Surprise Megal the Chemist backstory. Also, I should probably explain the sport of motorball a little bit. I won't demand you watch my video on the original series Motorball arc in order for you to understand it. Very briefly, it's a death sport where the person holding the ball after it makes a certain number of laps wins. The players are full-body cyborgs, basically heads in life support pods that get slotted into bodies. It's a combat sport and death is legal. There are 3 tiers of motorball competitors, and this story focuses on the lowest of the 3, the 3rd league. There are more rules than that, but honestly you don't really need to know even that much to understand the story here. Snev leaves the motorball track. He walks through the industrial cityscape of the Scrapyard, stepping around refuse and those sleeping on the streets. He comes to an open window. A woman sitting on the sill waves at him. He spies a masked figure in a cloak around the door. This place belongs to Beretta, a prostitute. She serves Snev a hot drink and puffs on a pipe. Snev asks about the strange man out front. Beretta brushes aside his concern, mentioning the masked guy comes around every day. That seems concerning to Snev, who asks if she wants him to chase him off. Beretta bursts out laughing. How sweet, look at him being protective. But she tells him not to worry, she has Marvin next door. A large cyborg steps past the doorway, dressed as a handyman and carrying a bucket of paint. However, Beretta guesses that, as a motorballer, Snev would be more reliable than your average street punk. That puts a smile on his face. This reminds Beretta that she had a session with his manager the other day. He's a lot more uptight than he looks. She wishes she could see Snev race just one time. Then he breaks the news to her that he actually just got fired from the team. He knew his job, he just had to keep going, not just to finish races, but to win them. But whenever he's doing good, he appears. A man appears in Snev's mind's eye, running toward him on the motorball track, his arms stretched wide in embrace and his mouth in a joyous laugh. Snev says he can't disobey him. He takes Snev to another world. All he feels is pleasure when his body breaks apart. Beretta just stares at him. Snev apologizes and moves to leave. He thinks he's going crazy. He suggests he must be sick and asks if she knows any good brain doctors, though he supposes he needs to find a job first. Beretta tells him to wait. She produces a deck of cards and starts to lay them down as Snev looks confused. He says it's okay, he doesn't believe in that stuff. He doesn't get why people are into fortune-telling. It's unscientific. Beretta wonders if he's a substantist, I guess meaning he's not superstitious, though notes that seeing demons on the circuit is a lot more unscientific. She flips 2 cards, makes a serious face, then smiles. 6 of diamonds symbolizes an open path, 7 of clubs, a conqueror. Snev's not done with the racing circuit yet. The woman tells Snev that he's going to win. He was born to be a king. He's just forgotten that fact. The motorballer is speechless. She also says his lucky number is 90125 and writes it on his glove, to his further confusion. She gravely warns him not to forget it. Time passes, and night comes to the scrapyard. Snev meets up with Mr. Holmgold at a bar. The older man asks if he likes Motorval. Snev says he does, but he didn't get into it by idolizing a specific player, nor does he enjoy competing with others. It's the race itself, the speed, that he loves. When he's in the middle of it, it's like he can surpass reality, even his own self, and reach something different, something wonderful. Holmgold chuckles and asks if he ever came across that something wonderful. Snev doesn't want to talk about it. The older man's expression turns serious. He says he knows what happened to Snev. He knows the thing that threw his fate out of whack was a horrible accident in his debut match. The racer looks at him blankly. His first race is actually the only one he can't remember. He asks what happened. It was Snev's first race at Aldini Circuit, Mr. Holmgold recounts, about 6 months ago. Snev's motorball body roared down the track, part of the large scrum chasing the ball around the circuit. The older man recalls that it was oddly quiet that night, almost dignified, not like the third league usually is at all. Right as the ballkeeper in lead was heading into the second lap, something happened. A man in the stands mounted the chain-link fence and levered himself over it to land on the track. He began to run with arms outstretched towards the oncoming racers. Snev breaks out in a sweat. Mr. Holmgold says it was the damnedest thing. Nobody knows who he was. They called him the Marathon Man. He was laughing, like it was the greatest of joys to race through players traveling at 300 kilometers an hour, until he reaches Snev. The impact tore the man to bloody shreds. Bones and limbs shattered, and his viscera splattered all over Snev and the track as the racer plowed into him at racing speeds. We move into the second chapter, beginning with a blur of confusion as Snev tries to make sense of things, twisted thoughts and feelings. He doesn't know where he is or who he is. A doctor questions whether he feels any pain. He can't feel any. He wonders what he's doing here. His manager appears out of the blue, addressing him as self-destructo and telling him to go ahead and blow himself up tonight, and to make it a big one. Snev can only frown, distraught and confused. He doesn't know what the man is saying. His teammate, Dragunov, says he doesn't like it. He shouts at Snev, demanding whether he thinks Motorball's a sideshow. He tells Snev to just not pull that crap in any of his games. Internally, Snev is in pain. Mr. Holmgold appears and tells Snev not to sweat it. As an engineer, he still has some pride, so he tuned up the racer's legs even if the body is an old junker. He tells him to go out there and race with everything he's got. Suddenly, he's on the track again. He hears someone groaning and wonders who it is. The ball is released onto the track. His vision is filled with distorted dark figures and beasts, telling him to run. Run with terror in his eyes, to eat, to devour one another, and leave a stench like that of shrieking steel. The crowd stares at him with ghoulish eyes. 100,000 liters of primal rage fill the arena. A deranged, drooling figure watches Snev's perspective through the monitor, indulging his appetite. Dopamine. Snev remembers. We move to an office where a man with a cigar is reviewing audience data with Snev's manager, Ben. Their monitoring decks show that most people prefer the simulated experience of a crash to the rush of victory. They're called crashophiles. Kids these days are fucked in the head, remarks the manager. The man laughs. Trophies are great, but viewership is the bottom line, and these crashophiles have a cult-like dedication. Therefore, he wants Snev back on the payroll. The manager is silent for a moment, but declines to elaborate. They have Dragunov as their serious competitor, so he won't complain if the boss says so. Sometime later, Snev is reading some papers, probably looking for a job, while listening to a nearby broadcast. Dragunov has achieved 14 straight wins and could be a frontrunner for the championship this season. There's also a lot of buzz around Excel, the nerve accelerator he uses, which Megal Incorporated has just put on sale. When asked what the key to his victory was, Dragunov simply says that he's the best and everyone else is dog shit. When asked about his competition taking Excel, he says dog shit will never rise above being dog shit. Blunt and to the point. Then they cut to a commercial, which is surprisingly about Snev. The death-defying suicidal maniac is back. Self-destructo Snev has returned. Imagine finding out you got your job back through an advertisement. Snev just stares wide-eyed at one of his own crashes replaying on the screen. The ultimate chaos on the circuit. Are you man enough to handle the extremes of madness? Get your advanced monitor tickets today! Snev does not know what to think of this. He calls up his manager, who says the boss changed his mind, so he should come to the race tomorrow if he can. The racer hangs up and exits the phone booth, scratching his head, probably a bit confused. But he seems pleased because he suddenly starts stretching. He's really gonna race this time. He sees the number Beretta wrote on his glove and remembers how she encouraged him. He guesses he better go tell her the news. Now, this whole chapter is actually 2 timelines. Those events on the racetrack from the start of the chapter are actually from the race Snev takes part in tomorrow, and from here on we'll be switching between that race and Snev going to Beretta's the day before. Snev roars down the track, chasing after the other racers around the curve. His progress is causing some consternation in the pits. The boss is surprised that Snev is still going, and that's no good. He needs to put on a show. The manager agrees to tell him, but Holmesgold objects. Snev is their player, not a disposable tool. The boss is unsympathetic. Sorry, but this is what the fans are here to see. The manager talks to Snev over the radio, telling him to blow. The racer remembers. He remembers Beretta wishing to see him race just one time. Yesterday, he went back to Beretta's place. He climbed the stairs, to find her door torn off its hinges. He calls her name into the dark room. The room is empty, but for the blood on the bed and the shredded curtains. After questioning her neighbor, he finds that Beretta is dead. She had a John in the other night that killed her. He was a sicko, made a real mess of things. Her neighbor Marvin tried to interfere, but the attacker split his head open. Nobody that saw his face survived. Back on the track, Snev maneuvers around 2 clashing players and continues his run. The boss and manager are getting antsy. The game's almost over and he still hasn't crashed. The manager shouts at him to just blow already. Snev continues on. Then he starts to hear laughing, and spies the Marathon Man out of the corner of his eye. He laughs at the racer and says he knows all about his suffering. This is not where he belongs. He will take him to a better world. Returning to after Snev left Beretta's, someone is crying. A child wailing on the side of the street. Snev trudges down the road of the pleasure district in a fog, the specter of her face on his mind. A man flags him down and tries to sell some videos. He's got a new one, just came in. Real good snuff. A young prostitute raped and gutted, right on film. Snev grabs the man's wrists and holds him despite his protests. Nearby, someone gets tired of the child's crying and kicks it in the head, splattering the street with blood. Snev says nothing and seems to shrink into himself. That is what this place is, he thinks to himself as several passers-by applaud the kicker for silencing the child. Yet he knew this already. Snev let the snuff peddler go. He walks away. He must not let the anger show. He catches himself against the wall, other hand to his mouth to hold in his vomit. He rears his head back and headbutts the wall, smashing a small crater into the concrete. He must not let the pain show, or this place will kill you. On the motorball track, Snev clasps his head. Internally, he screams his agony, flesh and bone coming apart as his brain is wrenched from his body. And the Marathon Man laughs. This is all he can do. Blow yourself up, the voice goads. Snev crashes, smashing into the track and going to pieces instantly. His head goes skidding across the track. The crowd oohs and ahs. Management is pleased. The crashophiles in the monitors wet themselves with joy as the sensations hit their brain. A technician notes that Snev's life pod is intact. He's alive. The boss says that's good. It wouldn't be worth the money if he died the first time. He tells them to go drag him in. Mr. Holmesgold is in tears. Meanwhile, Dragunov speeds down the circuit in possession of the ball. He snorts contemptuously at the sight of Snev's wreck and narrows his eyes. The techs are concerned and call out a warning, but he's headed right for Snev's head. Dragunov is bearing down on Snev as we start Chapter 3. At the last moment, he leaps over the other racer and takes a moment to mock Snev for soiling his legs, the loser. Management breathes a sigh of relief and Dragunov crosses the finish line. After the race, Snev despondently prepares to leave. Holmesgold raises a hand to say something to him, but he can't find the words. He looks down at his feet and walks away, but stops when he hears raised voices. Ben is enraged, talking to the team's cyberphysician, Dr. Koba. It seems they've been looking for something, but haven't found any sign of it. Ben is sweating bullets, saying it can't be gone, which Koba confirms is bad news. The engineer has no idea what they're freaking out about. Koba says that the boss is furious, indicating that it's Ben's fault for forgetting his bag someplace. Ben doesn't want to be reminded. Changing the conversation to ask about the big plan, Koba indicates that, thanks to Dragunov, Excel has a 42% market share. In 3 months, that should double to over 80%. And the Atom product they've been testing on Snev is nearly complete. If they can just find the bag, they'll be in the clear. Holmesgold is floored by this. Atom seems to be another drug, but as far as he knows, Snev was never taking any pharmaceuticals. They must have been administering it without his knowledge. That's exactly the sort of thing a cyberphysician in charge of a player's brain and life support systems could do without telling him. Dr. Koba also has connections to Megal Incorporated. Just what the hell is going on in here? Snev, quiet and despondent, walks the streets and finds himself in front of Beretta's place. Then someone calls his name. There's a woman leaning against a wall nearby, smoking a cigarette. She doesn't respond when he asks her name, only refers to the apartment. Easy place to set up in, huh? One whore dies and nobody bats an eye. She approaches him and asks if he's one of those people. To Snev's confusion, the woman meets his gaze defiantly. Snev looks away, then up at Beretta's old window. When he looks back, the woman is gone. Unsure what to make of the encounter, Snev heads to his apartment. When he goes to unlock the door, however, he finds that it's already open. His apartment is trashed. It seems he's been robbed. What a great way to round out the day he's been having. It's weird, though. Snev notices that they didn't seem to have taken his money. He hears a scratching sound, and a figure appears in the doorway. It drags a clawed finger down his door, scraping a sliver out of the wood. Snev turns, but his attacker is on him in a flash. Despite trying to defend himself, he quickly loses an arm and goes flying out his own window, bouncing off protruding pipes and neighboring rooftops on his way to meet the ground. The assassin looks down after him and considers Snev's arm, the one with the glove Beretta wrote a number on. The racer falls into an alley, where he is quickly discovered by the woman he saw at Beretta's place earlier. She helps him and doesn't give him a chance to ask questions, pulling him out of the alley and into the light. After sitting Snev down and getting them drinks from a vending machine, the woman introduces herself as Vona. Beretta was a co-worker of hers and her only friend. She apologizes for the way she talked to him earlier. In fact, Beretta actually asked her to find Snev. Vona says she can tell Snev only gets by because he hides his scars. That's why Beretta liked him. The racer tries to respond, but immediately collapses. It seems falling multiple stories out of a window isn't agreeing with him. Vona says they need to get to a hospital, but Snev doesn't have the chips. Instead, he tells her to take him to Mr. Holmesgold's place. He's an engineer rather than a doctor, but Snev thinks he can help. That takes them to what looks more like an abandoned industrial shack than a house, where Mr. Holmesgold replaces Snev's lost arm with a pincer, at least until he can get something better. Vona covers herself with a blanket and lights up a cigarette on the couch. The old engineer takes the opportunity to run the stuff he overheard by Snev. The racer is just confused. He had no clue he was being drugged for the races. Putting it all together, Holmesgold summarizes. First, Megal Incorporated tested the drug Excel on Dragonov and this new drug Atom on Snev, with help from their team manager and doctor. Excel strengthens a player's reflexes. Once it was available for general sale, it was a massive hit. Atom, however, remains a mystery. Second, recently, Ben the manager left a bag somewhere that contains something important. Megal Incorporated is tearing up the town looking for it. Third, it's quite possible that the attacker in Snev's apartment was sent by Megal. They probably suspect he took the bag. Frustrated, Snev complains that he's never seen this bag. He feels like his head is going to burst. He can't even handle his own life, and now he's caught up with some sort of drug conspiracy? Vona enters the conversation. She got a message from Beretta that was kinda odd, and she thinks it might have something to do with this. She said that if anything were to happen to her, then Vona should take Snev to the rental lockers at Lot 510. The two men stare at her, then Snev puts it together. He recalls Beretta saying she had a session with his manager the other day. Beretta is the one that took the bag. Mr. Holmesgold drives them to the rental locker facility in his tow truck. He's a bit concerned since there are at least 300 lockers there, but Snev isn't worried. He's worked out that the lucky number Beretta gave him is the locker number. He doesn't need it written on his hand to remember it. 90125. They quickly find the locker, and sure enough, there is a bag inside. Then something clunks to the ground beside them. It's Snev's severed hand. The killer stands at the end of the hall, waiting menacingly. Snev and Mr. Holmesgold are afraid, but Vona is fearless. She grabs a stool and charges Beretta's murderer, swearing at him. The killer whips open his coat like a flasher and doesn't even try to defend himself as Vona gets 2 hits in with the stool. The second one breaks the improvised weapon, only for the cyborg to grab her by the hair. The killer throws her against the lockers and pulls back his hand, prepared to impale her with his sharpened fingers. Snev intervenes, sliding his arm under the cyborg's elbow and behind his head, preventing him from moving the arm towards Vona. The killer's arm is powerful, though. Snev's limb instantly starts cracking under the strain. He tells Vona to hurry and move. She ducks away just in time. Snev's arm snaps above the elbow and the killer's strike goes right through the locker door. He whips his arm through the lockers, spilling their contents and sending the racer flying. I'll note that there seems to be a decomposing body amongst these contents from these random lockers. That doesn't matter right now, though. The killer prepares another strike. Let the pain come out, Snev thinks to himself. He flows out of the way of the attack. The killer finds his arm stuck in another locker, turning to find Snev moving around him, getting right up in his face. Snev screams. He must let the anger out, to let it speak. He headbutts the assassin, knocking him to the ground. Vona and Mr. Holmesgold look on in shock as an enraged Snev advances on Beretta's killer. He must let the anger out and unleash it. Snev screams and plunges his pincer arm straight through the killer's head, breaking it off as it destroys the assassin's brains. The final chapter. June 23rd on the Fragonard circuit. The final race for Self-Destructo Snev. Snev and Dragunov are getting ready for the race, with Vona and Mr. Holmesgold. The engineer is preparing Dragunov, who seems a bit confused. He asks the older man why he hasn't seen any other crew members before the race. Mr. Holmesgold says it's because it's all over. Team Spandau is no more. The boss, Ben, Dr. Koba, and all the assistants ran for their lives. The racer twists around, shocked, but the engineer just asks if he wants to submit a forfeit notice. He isn't getting paid either way. Like hell, he says, and tells Holmesgold to just give him his Excel. He sneers at Snev across the way, saying he has to make it clear which of them is number one, and which of them is dog shit. Snev is silent. Vona observes that he's shivering. She asks if it's always like this, but he says no. He's never been this afraid to race before. Everyone's come to see him blow up. It's terrifying to him. Vona tells him to race his best. He's still him. Do it the way that comes natural. Ignore the crowd. It's the way Beretta would want him to do it. Snev's face turns sad as he thinks about Beretta and remembers what happened when they confronted Ben. Snev and Mr. Holmesgold presented the manager with his bag, emptied. The atom samples it contained have already been submitted to the Motorball League. Furthermore, the engineer tells him that the Verdigris gang ain't gonna take kindly to what it'll do to their gambling operation. Ben wobbles and gapes at the little man while Snev watches him. The manager collapses onto a bench, defeated, and spills the beans. Half a year ago, Dr. Koba came to him with a get-rich-quick scheme, a top-secret test of 2 of Megal Incorporated's new drugs, Excel and Atom. They gave Excel, the reflex accelerator, to Dragunov. Atom, a drug that could slow down reflexes at will depending on how you mix it, they gave to Snev. It was a massive success. Dragunov won every race, and Snev kept crashing like he was possessed. The company planned to secretly mix Atom in Excel doses, thus controlling the outcome of races and making a killing in the books. But then he forgot his bag, and that bitch, Beretta, used it to extort him. Why? She wanted him to bring Snev back onto the team. Snev looks heartbroken. Beretta was killed because she tried to do something for him, and as Ben points out, that ended up being what the bosses wanted him to do anyway. Such a pointless waste. Snev leaves the room without a word and takes a breather in the hall. Mr. Holmesgold beckons Ben down to his level, then socks him in the face. That was for the kid. And so we come to the final race. A chaotic, roaring scramble as the motorballers jockey for position. Snev races along, wondering what he's been doing, what's been happening to him. Then he looks aside and his eyes go wide. Marathon Man looms behind him, arms outstretched for an embrace. But how, he stutters. Marathon Man was just a hallucination from Adam. Doesn't Snev get it? Marathon Man says. I am you. How does Snev expect to escape the hell that is his own mind? Snev screams, but he rejects it. In the darkness of his mind, he says he knows there's a place for him. Then the motorball appears before him, and he catches it. Then it starts talking to him. Know this, your place is in this world. Snev stares, overwhelmed. There shall be no burial within ash. You will uphold your promise through burning flames if need be. At least some of this is real, because Snev really has taken possession of the ball, much to the surprise of the announcer. He immediately comes under attack, but Snev skillfully evades them. They can only get in glancing blows. He's so effective that his attackers get hung up on one another and crash to the track. The crowd is shocked, and it happens again. Every player who tries to take him goes down on the track in flames. The commentators say he's moving like a fish in water. The crowd is frustrated. Some wonder if the race is fixed, while others egg him on to crash like all those times before. Snev catches up to Dragunov. Even he has to admit Snev has done well, by his standards, and only in his own head. He holds out his hands, expecting Snev to give him the ball. Instead, the racer rushes forward. Dragunov swears, but Snev's eyes are only looking forward. He thinks about Beretta and all the terrible things he's seen and experienced over the last few days, and he keeps flying forward, towards something brighter. He continues to dodge his foes, letting them break each other without needing to raise a hand, relying only on his skills as a racer. At least some in the crowd are in awe. How does he move like that? The commentator announces that Snev just beat a 28-year-old lap time record by a whole 5 seconds. He's lapped the competition at this point, but he finds Dragunov stopped at the finish line. A little quirk of the motorball rules. A match ends after a certain number of laps, but only the laps the ball makes are counted, so it's entirely legal to camp at the finish line to ambush the ball carrier on the last lap like this. Dragunov is determined not to let victory escape his grasp. He shouts that he'll splatter Snev like the dog shit he is. The racer matches Dragunov with a shout of his own. They clash, sending debris flying as Snev shouts defiantly. Dragunov is torn in half. He says he didn't know crashing could feel so good. With the ball raised over his head, Snev crosses the finish line. He slams the motorball down on the track. He has won. Vona and Holmgold cheer, yet the crowd greeted the man who raced through the goal with a hailstorm of boos. He was the winner nobody wanted. Self-Destructo Snev. Final racing record standing at 19 races and 1 win. The payouts of that day totaled 685,200 chips, making Snev the greatest long shot in history. The revelation of the Atom scandal dealt a major blow to Megal Incorporated, but did not drive it completely out of business. It lasted another 7 years until the hideous brain-melting Blaze stimulant caused a wave of brain deaths. The company leader became a wanted man. And, as I said earlier on, that story ends with Megal turning himself into a werewolf and dying when Alita kicks him in the head. As for Dragunov, he continued his motorball career with another team. He won 206 out of 288 events until the side effects of Excel overuse forced him into retirement. Snev was never seen again. And that's the end of Ashen Victor. All in all, I'm a big fan. It's tonally very different from Battle Angel, much more noir and heavier on pathos than the main series usually is. The Sin City influence is very apparent in the art, story, and tone. Most of the time, I think this style works, though there are a few where I don't think the attempt to imply lines worked very well. Snev is a far moodier and more tortured character than Alita as well. Given the creator had recently experienced a nervous breakdown that saw him severely lose confidence in his work before writing this, I have to think that some of the feelings he experienced went into how he portrayed the anguish Snev feels as his motorball dreams are consumed by vicious realities. At the extreme, the Marathon Man acts as a personification of suicidal ideation, urging him to crash and embrace another world, one that Snev can only beat by accepting that he does have a place in this world, and he can only reach it by continuing to race forward. It's a very hopeful ending for how dark the world he's portrayed in is. Maybe that's what the author meant when he said creating this work convinced him he would only recover by continuing his work in manga. Partly because of that, and partly because of how visceral some of the art gets, I honestly think Ashen Victor is the most emotionally raw work from Yukito Kishiro I've read, and I've read almost everything he's made. I could be completely wrong here, and maybe I shouldn't speculate too much about the mental state of a man I've never met, but I think there's pain in these pages. I do find myself wishing that Snev had a bit more of an ending. I sort of wish there was more information than him simply vanishing from the face of the earth, but I suppose having a happily ever after isn't really the point of a story like this. That's all I really have for you today. There are more side stories to cover before I jump into the Battle Angel sequel series, though it may take me a while to get around to them. I have a busy couple of months ahead of me. Until then, leave a comment and let me know what you thought about Ashen Victor.